The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports. You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators.
This felt very on par with Florida. Slow first half was brutal. I mean, you can't keep giving up 50 points in the first half. It's great that you could score 48 in the second half, but you can't keep giving up 51 in the first half. That's just not stuff that you can do and win. That's just not stuff you can do and win. It's just not acceptable. Not going to be a thing there. I will say this because I'm sure the chat's going to mention it. The officiating was bad, right? I think everybody can acknowledge that, or at least everybody here can acknowledge that. Officiating was bad. However, I will say this as well. I don't care. I don't blame games on officiating because my thought process is always play well enough so that officiating doesn't matter. So I don't care about that. But one huge difference that you see with this game, free throws were atrocious. Once again, Florida just can't do it. 18 for 29 from the free throw stripe, 62%. That's not going to win you a game, especially when your opponent shot 81.5%. If you're going to shoot like that and they're going to shoot like that from the free throw line, you're going to lose. Georgia was shooting 70% from the field at halftime. You're not going to win basketball games if you play like that. 70% from the field. Those are wide open threes. Or wide open shots, we'll say. You can take a bunch of D1 basketball players, and if you leave them wide open, that's basically what they would shoot, right? Like they'd shoot very efficiently. 70% would be great, right? Florida, you just can't play like that. You just can't. 11 for 32 from three. Will Richard was the only guy that actually showed up to play this entire game. I get it. Walter Clayton Jr. had 18 points. Walter Clayton Jr. Finished strong, but you can't have games like we saw multiple Gators have today and think that you're going to beat a quad one team. Look, I get it. People are going to be upset about, Georgia being unranked or just straight up losing to Georgia. I absolutely agree with you. But this is, once again, Will Richard showed up. No one else did. For a lot of times we saw maybe it was Walter Clayton Jr. being the one that showed up and a bunch of people didn't. Maybe Elijah Martin showed up and a bunch of people didn't. But I think this was one of the more egregious instances where one guy shows up for the whole game and for the most of the game, no one else is there, right? When Florida had 48 points, Will Richard had 24 of them. And it's not like he was shooting a ton. He finished with 30 points on 17 shots. That's incredibly efficient, okay? This was a game where Florida just did not shoot well, did not defend well. And if you don't shoot well, if you don't defend well, guess what? You're not going to win the game. You're not going to win the game. It's honestly as simple as that. You're not going to win the games playing the way that you played. Like there's just no other way to put it. Florida, like playing defense the way you did in the first half, just horrible. Never going to win playing like that. Never going to win playing like that. And I mean, you shot 27 for 66 from the field. So you made, I'm pulling up the effective field goal percentage here just because I want to make a point here. So you shot 16 there, or 16 made twos, total of 66 free throw attempts. Florida's effective field goal percentage in this game is 49.24%. Okay. 49.24. We're going to remember that. And we're going to put in Georgia's numbers there. 49.24%. And Georgia shot 63.46% was their effective field goal percentage. And I bring that up to make the point that Todd Golden, again, big analytics guy, there's a big reason for that. The most important value in the four factors is that effective field goal percentage. And Florida lost it by what? 15%? You're not going to win games if your opponent is out shooting you by that much. Okay? Florida won the offensive rebounding battles. That's important. Florida won the turnover battle. That's important, especially because a lot of Florida's turnovers were steals. That's also very important there. But you're not going to win games if you're shooting the way Florida shot and defending the way the Florida defended, right? Getting to the free throw line, also important for the four factors that Todd Golden will live by. You lost there as well. Like, it's just, I know that people hate analytics because it leads to too many threes being made or attempted and all that stuff. But when it comes down to it, around the rim twos, catch and shoot threes, and for most of the game, Georgia shot like that. And for most of the game, Florida left them open to do that. Like, it's just, you can't play basketball the way that the Florida Gators played tonight and win. This is one of those games where we look at them and we say, what the hell? Like, we all can watch this team and see the immense level of talent on this roster. But they have games like this. They have games like this that genuinely make you doubt how deep of a run they're going to make in March Madness. Because it's not, when they play this elite team. It's not when they play an elite defense. It's not because another team's being physical. It's not because of this or because of that. This is just a hot and cold team. And like the other Locked On SEC hosts, they'll take jabs at me or whatever because I will call Florida a very hot and cold team. And, they'll go, like, you're 18-3. How is it hot and cold? So hot and cold. But then you watch the game and you watch the team and they're so hot and cold about things. And it's like, it's not just, this game they're good, this game they're bad. No, it's they played like crap randomly. Thomas Hawk shot 3 for 11. That was the most uncharacteristic thing we've seen from him in a long time. Ruben Chinilu fouled out on the stupidest foul, as in bad call. I will say that. Just body up and dude bumps into him, falls down, and that was ridiculous. Will Richard played great, right? Played great basketball. Was aggressive defensively, made plays, was attacking the board, scoring. I mean, again, 30 points on 17 shot attempts is nuts. Walter Clayton Jr., 5 for 13 shooting, was ghost for most of this time. And I get it. He made big shots down the stretch. That's important. That was valuable. He helped you close the gap and take the lead there for a second. But think about it this way, the same way people complain about refs. If you shot halfway decent for most of the game, or even if you shot halfway decent in the first half, you're never in a position where you're down 26 and trying to come back. It's crazy. Alex Condon shot 1 for 7, 0 for 3 from 3, and the dude just wasn't even attempting threes for the first, 12 minutes of the game. They were kind of just leaving him, and he wasn't even attempting threes. And I will say another thing here that frustrates the hell out of me, but I gotta say it. Ruben Chinilu and Micah Hanlogton, while I love them, while I think they're great offensive rebounders, and I think that they can contribute defensively, and I think they can do stuff for you offensively, their lack of ability to shoot from pretty much anywhere outside of the restricted area makes a defense so much easier for other teams.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you you win, you get paid instantly. Wednesday night features a ton of interesting NBA action. The Celtics are 4-point road favorites against the Pistons. The Raptors, 9.5-point dogs in Indiana, and the largest line of the night, Oklahoma City favored by 17 at Brooklyn. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Carolina has finally announced their GM pick.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels.
We got to get into this GM conversation. Coach Davis obviously made light of this at his radio show a couple weeks ago, then was perceived to have reeled it back in, but really he was just saying, I want to focus on basketball right now, not the GM conversation. That's all that was. And then on Tuesday, yesterday, Carolina formally announces the hiring of Jim Tanner, and this title pack is really interesting to me, as the executive director and general manager. Let me just give us a couple quotes from the official release, just so we can get to know Jim a little bit. Quote, Jim Tanner is the founder and president of Tandem Sports and Entertainment, a full-service agency representing professional athletes, coaches, and broadcasters. Jim has represented more than 70 NBA players, including 40 first-round NBA draft picks, 12 top 5 NBA draft picks, and 6 Naismith Hall of Fame inductees. He's negotiated more than $1 billion in contracts for his clients. In this role, folks, catch this. This is critical. Tanner will, among other things, help manage the construction of the roster, negotiate contracts, identify and hire new scouting and analytics staff, and spearhead player development programs. Jim is a 1990 UNC grad. His kids went to Carolina. He's originally from High Point, North Carolina. He has repped 17 Tar Heels in their professional careers, and he himself says this, and then Pack will get into it. Quote, both of my kids and I went to Carolina, and we owe so much as a family to this university. This is such an exciting opportunity, and I couldn't be more thrilled. The landscape of college basketball has changed dramatically in a short period of time with NIL, collectives, and the transfer portal. It's a highly competitive and constantly evolving environment. And I love this statement, Pat Kilby, right here. I look forward to using my 28 years of experience recruiting and representing players to help position UNC as strategic, adaptive, and innovative in scouting and attracting top domestic and international talent while staying true to the principles and values that have defined Carolina basketball over the years, end quote. Pat Kilby, that is good stuff. What is your initial response to this news that came out on Tuesday?
Well, I was thrilled. Of all the candidates I've read about, heard about, Jim Tanner is by far the one that I was most excited about, because it does feel like, it was cool to kind of keep it in the family or whatever. You know, we'd had that talk. Do we want a Carolina guy? Do we want someone that's not from Carolina, someone that's a little bit different? And he kind of bridges that gap, right? Like he is from Carolina, and he has those ties and those connections, and he's familiar with the university, and he knows what North Carolina is grounded by. But he also has built a career in the NBA representing athletes playing in the NBA, coaches, broadcasters. He knows what the value of players are. He knows how to construct rosters and what goes into that, and the connections that that can help him with that also. And so, he's just really well versed. And I think of all the GMs I know of in college basketball, he may very well be the most qualified, if not one of the most qualified GMs there is. And so,
take that, Woj.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think it's just a great hire all around, and it like I said, it bridges that gap between keeping it in the family, but also getting somebody that's very well connected and is brilliant in their own right. And so, I think this is a home run hire for North Carolina. That's
a great way to put it, Pack. I hadn't thought about this until exactly what you just said. When Carolina fired Matt Doherty, Roy Williams was the obvious and perfect person to be the next head coach. And that was a marriage of keeping it in the family and who you should go after as the number one choice, even if he wasn't in the family, right? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this feels very similar to me to that. even if Jim Tanner was not a Tar Heel, he is an obvious person you would sprint to and offer as much money as you could to hire him. And so I love your point there, man, that this is a great cross section of, yes, he's in the family, but this is a dude, man. He's got all of those accolades that you just talked about. Something I hadn't thought about until we're just talking right now is because of all of everything that's on his resume, everything that's on his CV, man, he is going to be a guy that players come in, whether transfers, high school, international, whatever, and say, oh, this is a dude that knows the NBA, has connections, can get me there alongside Hubert Davis, right? Like they both have those ties, and it just further strengthens Carolina being able to reach out in those ways. So I think that's a big win of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was reading, doing some of my own research on him. And what I found was that when Roy Williams was the coach, he actually would use Jim Tanner as kind of a buffer between the NBA and these college guys trying to figure out whether or not they were going to go to the NBA or return for another year. And so to me, that just goes to show he's got connections.
Yep.
And he knows how to get guys to the next level, what they're looking for, how they're looking to go about it, how they're looking to do it. And so that's a great thing to have, but he also has the roster construction side of it, right? He knows because he's been an agent and he's represented 70 NBA players. He knows what players are worth. He knows what contracts look like. He knows what good deals are, and he knows how to take care of those things. And so, man, I just see this as a huge, huge win for North Carolina basketball.
And I love that point, Pac. Like, folks, you've always, in the Roy Williams era, you would always hear the general, like, hey, we've been talking to NBA people to figure out like where the landing spot is and where you might get drafted. That random general person out there is Jim Tanner, right? Like that is who we're talking about. And that again is why this is so important. Pac, I think a big part of this for me is in the moment of hiring Bill Belichick and all the money given to go all in on football, both from hiring him and his staff and money allocated for NIL for players. I think there was a big fear, and I had that fear. I'll go ahead and put my hand up, that Carolina was going to forsake where their bread was buttered, forget where their bed was made, whatever phrase you want to use. And this is first and foremost a basketball school, but are we trying to go all in on football and forsaking basketball? Because that's what it felt like, Pac. Did I maybe you felt like that? I know I certainly did. And this to me is the first clear and definitive indication that Carolina is going all in on both. Bubba Cunningham had said that at the time. I personally didn't believe it, but now I do. Where are you at?
Well, I completely agree. When the money was poured into football for Bill Belichick and his staff and just a revamp of that program, that was kind of at the same time that we were all sitting here thinking, why didn't we spend more money on basketball players for our roster? And what's going on here? Is Carolina hurting for money? We were kind of having those questions going on in our mind. And then Carolina comes out and just pours money into football. And then we're going, uh-oh, and now we're seeing that we're making a commitment to athletics as a whole. And I think it's the best commitment any school can make. Athletics, especially in the ACC, the SEC, the Big Ten, that is, to use what you said earlier, that's where your bread is buttered. Kids will go to schools and not even be involved as a player, as an athlete, but just because that's who they're a fan of. Or, like I grew up a North Carolina fan. Am I good enough to play at North Carolina? No, but I would love to go to school there because that's who I'm a fan of. It's just athletics it pays huge dividends, not just for the athletes and the coaches there on campus, but for the entire school. And so I think it's a very worthy investment from North Carolina. And I'm glad to see that we're finally not just getting into the game. We're setting the curve. I think Carolina's finally making a huge contribution monetarily, but also in growing our staff, making sure we're bringing the right guys in, making sure we're upping our NIL money. I just think this is a big step forward for UNC.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Wednesday night features a ton of interesting NBA action. The Celtics are 4-point road favorites against the Pistons. The Raptors, 9.5-point dogs in Indiana. And the largest line of the night, Oklahoma City favored by 17 at Brooklyn. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Things are crazier for ASU basketball right now. BJ Freeman dismissed from the team. Shane Quainton's injured once again. Amir Ali is balling out, though. We got to talk about all three of those on today's episode. BJ Freeman dismissed from the team. That was not what I had on my bingo card for this year's basketball team. It feels like this came out of nowhere. But the question is, did it come out of nowhere? Because the more we look at this situation, right, it feels like there may have been breadcrumbs along the way that kind of pointed to a situation where this marriage between BJ Freeman and ASU may not have been what we hoped it was. And this is speculation. Like, I can't speak on behalf of Bobby Hurley. I can't speak on behalf of BJ Freeman. What I can speak on is my opinion on everything that we have seen on the court. But BJ Freeman dismissed from the team. We found out a couple of hours before the game against Kansas State this past weekend in Manhattan. And I believe AZ Central was the first to report it. And it kind of came out of nowhere. But Bobby Hurley let us know, hey, BJ is not with the team anymore. We're moving on without him. In press conferences since then, the way that Hurley worded it was he was dismissed for conduct detrimental to the team. We have seen numerous times this year that BJ Freeman has been emotional. And I think that is the best way to describe it, is emotional. Like, he's not a bad kid. It's not like he's going out and setting fires or anything like that. He's just an emotional player, and these things happen. But there's a point in time where you have to be able to nip things in the butt, and you need to realize that there are times that are worth being really emotional, upset about, and there's times where you just need to keep it to yourself. And we saw that BJ Freeman was ejected twice this year. Most infamously was his headbutt of Caleb Love against U of A when ASU lost on their home court and then decided to leave the court before the game ended. First of all, there was a differential on the shot clock and the game clock, and ASU tried to leave before they had to inbound it for the point however many seconds. And everybody was off the court. Everyone was in the locker room, and Bobby Hurley leaves and everything, and it's a whole fiasco. But BJ Freeman had taken what was already an explosive powder keg, because it's just an emotionally charged game with U of A and ASU. It's a historic rivalry. These guys hate each other, and I love it. But there are lines that need to be drawn when it comes to rivalries, because at the end of the day, it's sports. And sports aren't everything. It's everything to me. It's everything to fans. But there are lines that shouldn't be crossed. One of them is shouting F the Mormons. Proud of ASU for not doing that. That's for sure. Can't say that about another fan base, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, headbutting somebody else, I don't like that. Even if it's a U of A player and one that I don't care for, like Caleb Love. I am not a Caleb Love guy. That still should not have happened. That's just inexcusable. It can't happen. And I've said before, like, I love games with physicality, and I love rivalries where guys are in each other's faces, pushing, shoving, talking that smack. I love it. I live for that. It's one of the things that makes ASU and U of A's rivalry so great. It's just good old-fashioned hate. There is no love lost between these two programs. You see on the football field, there's fights all the time, and I love that. I love a good fight. I don't like a dirty fight. I don't like sucker punches. I don't like headbutts. I don't like guys getting clipped from behind. There's times and a place for altercations, but there's never a time and a place for anything dirty like that. That was dirty. Just is what it is. Let's get back to talking about BJ Freeman, and I will get off my high horse there. I will step down from my pedestal because I've talked about it before. That was already a very emotionally charged incident. Again, I think that's the best way to describe it. I don't know BJ Freeman, but I am not willing to say he is a bad person. Not at all. What I am willing to say is he's a very emotional young man, and he gets into the middle of a game and he's dialed in, and I love that. I love it. You just got to pick and choose your battles. And he has chosen wrong twice this year because he also got ejected against Colorado. Bobby Hurley also said at one of the losses, I don't think it was Houston. I can't remember. One of the losses, Bobby had come into a press conference and said, yeah, some of the players are refusing to talk to me. Speculating. I wonder if BJ Freeman was one of those guys. Clearly, this was not a good marriage. That's one of the things I led off with here is the marriage between BJ Freeman and Bobby Hurley and Arizona State Sun Devils basketball was not the best one. I don't know why. Things happen, Not everything is hunky-dory, roses and rainbows and everything like that. There is stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but it certainly feels like there was a lot more than what we saw on the court, and we already saw a lot of emotions on the court. I'm curious if BJ Freeman was one of those players who did not want to talk to Bobby Hurley. And we look at 2 ejections and Bobby removing BJ from the program for conduct detrimental to the team. That's exactly how he described it. This is intense. This is a very intense situation. But we're going to see what happens. Now, I do have a handful of questions. First of all, is Bobby losing the team, or was it losing a player or two? I don't know. Historically, we know Bobby Hurley as a player's coach, and that's one of the reasons these kids flock to ASU. When we recruit, we've never had a problem recruiting. We've had multiple 5 stars in different classes. We land high 4 stars all the time. Like, Bobby Hurley recruits like it's nobody's business. If he was somebody that players didn't like, they would not come here. 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, guys in the transfer portal who were in their 20s. They wouldn't come to ASU. So there was a point in time, and I asked this on the podcast, is Bobby Hurley losing the team? Is he losing everyone in that locker room? Is the message stale? Is it time to move on? I guess we're going to find out if it was really just one proponent of all the, I keep saying emotion, but that's what it is. Because ASU won the game against K-State, and they looked very balanced when they were out there. If we see moving forward for the remainder of the year that ASU is playing balanced basketball and they start winning games, that's when I have the question of, is this really a Bobby Hurley problem? Because we've had ups and downs with Hurley. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to defend the lack of success that Bobby Hurley has had, because to say a lack of success is a dramatic understatement here. Bobby has not done nearly enough to warrant being at this program for 10 years. I don't know if he's going to be here for 11 years. We'll cross that bridge this offseason when things start to materialize and things start to happen. But if ASU is able to finish out the season strong, right, it's got to promote, I could say provoke some questions here. So as far as what's next, you just need to continue to regroup, refocus the team, and get dialed in for the last handful of games. And it's a tough slate. You got BYU, Texas Tech, and Arizona. All are ranked right now. This is not going to be an easy end to the schedule.